Okay, so everybody, today I have Jeremy Thornhill with us, and him and his lovely wife have written this great book called Help, My Kid Wants to Be an Artist.
Yeah. My
Yes.
partner's name is Kiele Poirier. We currently live in PEI. So if you ever come out and visit, she has her own shop and art studio out here, so feel free to swing by. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go over the history of why I wrote this book. Originally, like many people who got into the entertainment business, which I've been in for like over 2 decades now, I guess you could say. Um, I just wanted to kind of tell stories. That was like the main goal. I grew up in a household that didn't really get art that much. They didn't really understand culturally the impact that art has and stuff like that at a greater level that I felt like I was keen to understand. Um, and movies really just kind of shaped my life and my personality and my moral compass to some extent, and watching like life stories and experiences from other people really gave me insight to the human experience as much as it could without experiencing those things myself. My mom always likes to joke that my brother was the kind of person that if you told him not to do something, he'd do it anyway and then figure it out himself, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a story of him like, don't touch the burner in the oven, and then he would touch it and then hurt himself. And I was the kid that listened, and didn't need to experience the pain to realize it was the wrong thing to do. I also like am partial to learning from other people's experiences and not having to do it myself,
Mhm.
to some extent. Like I think this is kind of a, I don't know, from what I've been told anyways in my life, this is like a hard skill set for people to take on, I guess, to try and like learn from those around you and their experiences more so than having to go through it yourself. You know what I mean? To avoid mistakes, I guess you could say, or roadblocks. I mean, I kind of live in a gray area these days. I don't know, good or bad. I kind of am in the we'll see philosophy.
Mhm.
Um, but anyways, to tie this back, this is why I got into film, because so many stories had shaped my life, and my perspective, and seeing different perspectives and all those kinds of things. And I thought, there was moments in my life where I was struggling, and a film would help me. And I would gain new perspective that would change my opinion on the situation I was in to help someone like that, just once, was what I thought a fruitful and moral goal or dream to attain in my life.
Yeah. No,
Um,
definitely. I grew up in a different scenario where my parents were actually supportive of me doing some arts. But I have seen lots of classmates and lots of friends who actually their parents were like, no, there's no work in the arts. There's no this and the other. And I've kind of seen it both ways. And
yeah,
that's hard. That's really hard. Like, how do you flourish and strive? In this day and age, I know a lot of people, especially kids and teenagers and youth, we're facing a whole new generation of people going into, well, more in a better word, AI. AI,
yeah,
and
yeah.
where does our future of art lead to? So it's like if there's a text to image or text to video or this and the other, a lot of people are like, oh, should I even try? Should I even? So I think maybe your book too can be like, okay, there's different resources out there, different ways to be an artist,
Oh
different
yeah.
to encourage and markets. And I think that's what we all need right now too, right? We need some inspiration. Like where else? Like if I can't just be a painter or an illustrator or a, but I think to me personally, I think you can just in many different ways
Oh
to be
yeah,
creative
definitely.
and to challenge yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of like, not to say I wouldn't say my parents were necessarily unsupportive. I would just say they were ill-informed, like they probably really wanted to help, my mom in particular. It was just like they didn't really know how, or like what to do with me, in a sense. Like like the best way,
Yeah.
what birthed this book was, since moving out in PEI, there isn't a ton of people with experience that I have with some of the productions that I've had, and one of the locals that my partner has met, and we have met, wanted me to give a talk to a program called the Young Millionaires. And this is essentially a program for young kids that have entrepreneurial aspects or business aspects. And
Wow.
a few of them were in the arts. So one was doing a comic book, one was doing fine art, one was trying to get into animation and things like this. So she wanted me to kind of give a talk to those kids. Um, and as I was talking to them, I had like a realization that I should really be talking to their parents, you know, not them necessarily. Like they're eager and passionate and love art and all those kinds of things, but they were kids, you know, like one as young as 13 and things like that. So they're not really going to quantify the information that I would give them on how to like make a regime and a schedule and you know what it takes to flourish in a career for this and all those kinds of things more so than it would be their parents.
Mm.
And that kind of sparked the intrigue of, well, I wonder if there's resources out there that I could find to just give to these parents to be like, hey, you know, read up on this stuff or get this book or look at this article. And really there's very, very limited resources for parents who are unartistic but have artistic kids.
That is
Um,
so interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought it was like a really unique perspective to help there. Because as unfortunately, as my career has grown, I haven't really written or produced anything, you know, to what my original dream was to help or to, you know, maybe give perspective or move an audience or something along those lines necessarily. And I'm kind of coming in the senior years of my profession, and I thought maybe this is a way that I can give back or help, you know, to the community because there's probably, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of artists out there that don't get the support that they need that could be the next major wave of influence or perspective that helps shift a culture, you know, or um, bring a unique voice to a situation and they're never realized because they just didn't have, you know, the type of support that you need to thrive in this industry,
It's
I
very
would say.
true. It's very true. Yeah. No, that's kind of how I grew up. I had the whole self-talk to myself. It's like, can I really get in? There's thousands of people with portfolios way better than mine. Or what about this? Or I originally wanted to go into animation right from high school, but I was like, I didn't have the self-confidence to do so. And like my parents too, they didn't maybe know how to push me or get me in that direction. So then I chose a safe route and I went into advertising from high school. So I was like, oh, graphic designer. There's always, you know, places that need a graphic designer. So I did that for several years. And then I was like, I don't know, maybe I can try. Like once I was building up the confidence, I was learning different software programs, learning different things in my tool belt, learning how to interact in a work environment. And I think that helped me in the long run with the animation program, just because I also learned how to network. I learned how to go more for what I wanted. So ideally,
Yeah.
I think too, if they had that in the high school level where they were teaching us how to do some of that stuff, like preparing us for the real world, giving us some of that self-confidence. But you're right, like parents too, we kind of need that guidebook of like, help, I'm in a completely different field than what my kid wants to go into. Where do I even start? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
and it,
exactly.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
love your because I know you do comedy as well. So like I could just read in the headlines. I'm like, yeah, man, this makes me chuckle. Like I do want to pick up the book and read it. What would
That's
your
nice of you to
highlight?
say.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
seriously, it's good. I was like, yes, I need this. And I'm gonna
Yeah, I
recommend it
mean,
to friends too, because I was like, no, come on, anybody can read this. You could tell it's gonna be funny. It's gonna be full of some great advice, new perspectives, right? And help out a lot of
yeah.
people.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
to give some inspiration, I remember I was working at a mutual fund job doing their videography and setting up their
Okay.
green screen and doing CG and graphic design to some extent when I get out of school, and I was sitting on the subway and I saw a poster actually, not to gloat about colleges because I think, you know,
Yeah.
college education, and I talk about this in the book and it's like a long topic to talk about education. Um, but there was a poster from a college saying like, "Hey, does your kid like music?" And then it listed like 60 jobs that dealt with
Wow.
music, you know, that was anywhere from like an events person or someone that helps set up musicians at stadiums to sound recordists of film to sound recordists of corporate videos to, you know, all kinds of things that it labeled. And I was like, man, you know, my parents were like very supportive of my brother being in hockey and, taking him everywhere. And not that he wasn't a good player, he was in the OHL and all those kinds of things. It's just like the chances of becoming a highly successful hockey player are so extremely slim.
Mm,
But
that's
I
true.
wanted to be a filmmaker, but there's like, you know,
Yeah.
thousands of jobs that utilize that skill set, and even more so now than when I was a kid. You know what I mean? So it's not implausible to have a job. And I think like this is a part of understanding your kids as well, that and them understanding like art is a hobby, but you can get paid to do it. It
Yes.
just depends on where you want to settle yourself, and don't like shun any opportunity, because you can learn, like as you're saying, you're a graphic designer, you learn to get your own confidence. You learn, there's lots of areas in art and artwork where people will still learn, even if it's not the exact profession that they were looking to have. Um,
Oh,
eh,
definitely. And I think a lot of people get pigeonholed thinking, well, no, I just want to do comic books or I just want to do this and that. But as we are both aware, our careers change and they flow over time. There's up and down periods. So it's how can we be adaptable? How do we have versatile skills that we can come and go from different creative areas? But you're all
yeah,
using those soft skills, those you could adjust to different dynamics. For example,
yeah,
like I'm doing some like house staging for a realtor right now. And I'm like, for me, it's like 3D modeling in real life. Like, let's make this set look pretty, or let's do this, or how
yeah,
do I make the
100%.
room more and make it look more presentable, or how will it look composition wise? So there's many different elements we can take to different fields, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of what the book, like, to break it down, it's in two parts really.
Mhm.
The first part is kind of convincing parents that there is work for your kid.
Mhm.
Like, I heard the term, don't you think it's about time to start thinking about a real job,
Yes.
in my life many times, and I just think it just comes from a lack of understanding that pretty much everything you see in a visual space or lyrical space is done by artists, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what the book breaks down. Like, I'll talk a little bit about AI and like the series and sequence of the book. This is the book, by the way. I'm just
Yes.
yay.
Awesome. It's
Um,
available on Amazon as well.
so like the part one is your child won't starve, I promise. Um, and I think like why I wrote this aspect is because I'm a bit unique in the way that, as you know, I'm on the production side in my career. But I'm also artistic and understand the arts and went to school for art and all those kinds of things. I've directed some shorts and music videos and whatnot. And, I'm not creatively declined. I don't know, when you're inclined creatively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanted to give kind of an aspect to the business side of art, which a lot of people don't understand or don't even know. Even a lot of artists that work in this business don't understand or don't know. Talking about how to make your kid hireable, like, what the things are, because I've hired so many artists and unfortunately let go of people as well, because it's just part of the position.
Mhm.
But giving tips as to why those decisions were being made, especially for kids right out of school, and what they need their demo reel to look like, and what sparks the ignition, and school in general.
Mhm.
And talking to parents that, you don't need to go to school to succeed in this business.
Yeah.
Like, there's, especially now more than ever, with the amount of resources that are available online and things like that. It's if your kid can't thrive in that environment, because I was like a kid that was born and raised thinking I have to get good grades in every course.
Mm.
And what the book talks about is this is a hindrance in art. Like, if your
Yes.
kid really wants to do one thing, and you're putting them in a program, and this is the unfortunate thing about the arts programs, is there is no centrified discipline, and they expect you to graduate by passing every class. But if your kid just wants to, draw cartoons, they don't want to rig characters, they're not going to pass
No.
that class, like, and the pressure and
Yes.
anxiety of trying to learn those skill sets to pass the class is extremely imposing. um and I was like that. I was like a generalist that came out not an expert in anything, because I tried to get good grades in every class, and it just didn't work. It wasn't what I
I
wanted to
did the
do.
exact same thing. Yeah, yeah. I was like, I need to be good at everything, thinking that's how you moved forward, but
Yeah.
not realizing, you just have to be good at one or two different things.
Yep.
Focus on that.
And this is the
Yeah,
industry, right? Like the more
it's
you are disciplined on one specific thing, the higher value you are in the marketplace,
yeah.
you know.
But
Um,
also, it's a type of person you are too, I find. You could have the best portfolio, the best demo reel, the best, the best work that you've demonstrated. But if you don't know how to talk to people, you don't know how to network, and you also don't take advice or criticism well. Like
yep, this is
that's always
another
like the
big
number
point.
one thing. That is like,
Yeah.
especially working for somebody else, you realize, what, they're paying you. Just do what they're asking. You can give them advice, you can make it look the way you want, but there's always gonna be push and pull. There's always gonna be, how do
Definitely.
you work with clients? How do you work with art directors?
Like there's like basically just like I outlined 4 areas like that to help your kid get prepared for the industry essentially. Um, and one of the major points is getting them used to feedback. And I kind of go over a story of, one of the first experiences I know of in the business of a project that I was on that had like 38 revisions, and the director was sitting there every time, and some shot that should have just taken,
Oh,
less than a day to finish, but it took 3 weeks,
mhm.
and it ended up in the trailer of the film and all this kind of stuff and became this huge big thing. And then they went back to my version 3 anyway, and they liked it the most, So it's like,
Yeah,
understand that revisions are not an insult to your artistry. You know what I mean? Like this
it's
is
not
a big
personal.
no, it's
It's
not personal.
yeah,
And this is the thing that they don't teach you in school. Like I'm a big proponent for changing how, especially in the animation business, how it's taught to children, because essentially when they go to school, they make all the decisions. They decide what project they want to work on. They decide what it's going to look like. They decide, what assets they want to use or build. They get reference from themselves. They're not, that is like the complete counterintuitive way to train someone how to be in the animation industry.
yeah.
Because you make no decisions really,
Oh,
like it's not that, no, I'm not saying you make no decisions, but what I mean is your creative decisions are limited to the job you're doing,
yeah,
not your own freedom of the job you're creating, unless you want to go that route. So I mean, you were talking a little bit about confidence and your demo reel not looking great and all those kinds of things. Well, I can tell you, the success of Roblox games and some of the franchises that have come out of Roblox
right.
would say otherwise.
Yes,
And I think, the industry, as we know, is changing and evolving, and I think this is becoming more paramount, that the idea of quality is only in the hierarchy of corporatism more than it is in anybody's mind of watching content. Um,
exactly.
you know,
And really, us as artists, every time we look at our work, we're like, oh, we could fix this, we could make this better. Oh, I wish I had said this or done that. But really, in retrospect, you're right. Like as you look at what are kids really into right now, or what is the market you're going for, a lot of it is just over people's heads. Like they're not seeing that one little detail that you fixated about for a week. They're not thinking about this and the other. Like if you look at, say, Roblox, you look at Skibbity Toilet, which is like a huge thing on YouTube right now. There's so many different things that the kids are really into, and we're just
yep,
like, what?
yeah, yeah. I
Like
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
as artists,
it's
like some of this kills us. We're like, oh, like why? Like there's so many amazing animated movies out there, this, that, and the other. But you got to think about your market, think about who you're making the work for. And you're right, every show, every project that you work on is completely different, different demographics, different this and the other. But there's something that comes from the corporate world of how they want things, something that comes from us as artists about we're just being so nitpicky because it's a part of us that we're also putting out to the world. We want to be proud
right.
of it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's something to be said about that too, about the corporatism of artistry, where now some of the best artists can't see otherwise.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, I think kids are our gateway into honest human nature. And what they're doing is just watching things that they like.
Yeah.
And they aren't masked by an impressionism of what things should look like and what things are good, or what they need to be considered good, or of high quality. And this kind of leads into the AI discussion that you kind of brought up briefly there. Kind of
Exactly.
got a ton of strong opinions about this situation, and the only, um, like I said, I live in kind of a gray world. I think what's happening to artists' work is terrible.
Mhm.
Um, but the yin and yang to that situation is that there may be a future where an individual person can create something, like you said, of quality that will realize their vision rapidly. And the benefit that I see to that is that we get rid of middlemen. I think like a lot of autonomy is happening right now in human civilization and society in general. I think the idea of big, large corporate entities controlling consumerism is slowly fading. I think this is where the fear comes from AI and why corporations are investing heavily on it because they want to own it.
Yes,
Because if AI is utilized by a small group of people to realize a project that becomes successful, then that deletes the need for them. Um, so I mean, I understand right now the situation is very detrimental to artists in a sense that their licensing is not um in a moral standing at all whatsoever.
yeah,
And people are making money off of the hard work and backbone of other people for, I would imagine, centuries at this point because of what we've archived and put on the internet. And I've always been a proponent and said like the only solution I can see is that they get paid out every single time
yes,
something is generated from their artwork, or they opt in like Shutterstock and other um places where you opt in to put your work on for people to purchase, and then it gets
exactly.
filtered into the AI generating system. Um, but you know, the other side of the coin is that now an individual in Ohio or none of it doesn't need Disney to make their story or their vision realized anymore. Um, and that's a lot of power to give to an individual and a lot of autonomy to start telling stories that everybody has always wanted to tell but has no affordability to be able to reach that space.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, it's terrible. Moralistically, I am on the side of artists 100% right now
Yeah,
until this gets figured out and we figure out a system that doesn't hurt people and hurt the people that are making companies rich at this point.
yes.
But at the same time, the technology or the aspect of the technology I can see in the future being extremely beneficial for autonomy and not needing large scale companies to realize any visions. And this is what YouTube is doing, right? Like, I think YouTube is changing the landscape for media consumption in general, and TikTok and all these other social video media platforms. It's like we can see right now the entertainment industry is in a situation where they're sitting trying to figure out how to be relevant still.
Yeah,
um and
definitely.
it's extremely hard. They thought, well,
And
we'll just pump
they're
out
all
as much
fighting against
content,
each
right? And they're
other.
like,
Yes.
we'll just pump out as much content as we possibly can to compete with YouTube, which has like 1 billion minutes of viewable content uploaded every day or something silly like this, and they just won't be able to compete. Like I said, autonomy is coming, and human beings are going to be more responsible for their own success than ever before and not lean into gateways and barriers that you have to hop through to get to success. um so that's kind of my take on AI. It's like it's not completely ill-informed, but I just see it like I don't want to really have a very strong opinion on it. There's tons of people out there that are much more informed about this than me. All I know is that I'm morally on the side of artists. I think
Hmm.
it's pretty terrible what's happening to their work right now, and people taking money from them and job loss and all these kinds of things.
Even just like the morale out there and the
Yep.
motivation has just plummeted because now you're just like, well, what about this or what about there's a lot of uncertainty in the air, and I think the next 5 years is really going to dictate where things are going to go.
Yeah, and I think but
Yeah.
but so this is the other thing is that like I think that smaller sanctities of businesses need to start arising. I think like the community of artists need to band together to create more so and have autonomy than working for large major corporations. Um, and this is already happening in the game industry. Like in
Good,
in
good.
in animation, it's taking a little bit of time to catch up.
Mhm.
But even this year alone, there's been indie games that have come out by first time developers, like first time releases.
Mhm.
There was a game called Sunken Land that me and my
Oh,
son played on stream,
yeah.
and it was an indie developed game, came out, made like, I don't know, $14 million in sales. Small team built the
Yes.
game in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like there's avenues where I think like the structure, the community of artistry, like video games and animation and film, are looking more to support independent things
Mhm.
now more than ever, especially in the gaming community. And I hope that that trend flows into film and animation, because there's really no need for people to make millions of dollars doing this kind of stuff. It is a regular job,
Yeah.
and the glorification of content creation is extremely like overdue for an overhaul of salary expectations and wages and people's like opinions of things and all those kinds of things. And I think, we're going to go back into a day of like drive-in days of movies where, people like Roger Corman would get 1.5 million bucks to do 10 movies, and he'd pump them all out in a year and a half and move on to the next contract and just live his life working.
Yes.
Um, yeah, because I think like a lot of people have this idea that no, I'm just gonna make it big, work for a little bit, and then not have to ever work again. Whereas like
No.
the entertainment business needs to be a job again, and not
Yes.
just
A money
like
machine.
yeah, yeah.
It's just they see one thing that makes a ton of money to like, let's do part two, let's do part three. But there's a beauty of like, no, the story's over. Let's just leave it at that. This was a masterpiece. Do not mess it up anymore. We've all known those shows and movies. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry, I just had a heads up. We are running out of time. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got 10
10
minutes
minutes.
left.
10 minutes. Yay.
Yeah.
Because I know we could like chat for ages about this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
What would
Um,
be some advice you would give people who want to get into the arts in this day of age, but they either
yes.
don't know where to start or they're worried about the future moving forward? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll speak to parents, I'm not going to speak to artists per se. There's tons and tons of resources, and most of them know about them and are online nowadays, especially young ones. But for parents, like the key to your child's success, I would say, as becoming an artist is it breaks down into really just like three major things. One is getting them used to a schedule. And this means like you creating the schedule for them and blocking out time when you are going to be with them doing the thing that they love. So if they love to paint, like
Oh,
make a space and a time and an actual schedule and stick to it and get them used to being in a scheduled routine to do their artistry. And this means you may sit there for like 20 minutes on that schedule where they do nothing. And they're just like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And da da da. And you
yeah.
can be there kind of just cheerleading them or being, like have an idea of what you want if they come in roadblocked and things like that. And there will be sessions where they do nothing. They might, but keeping them and getting them used to a schedule really like trains their brain to be able to focus on their artistry and understand that if they want to do it for a living, they have to be, on a schedule working and doing it no matter what, essentially, if they want to survive in the business. So that's one thing that I really am a proponent of. I think keeping an organized schedule really is beneficial for artists for sure, and them understanding what that means and how to work on the schedule. We
Yeah.
talked about one point, which is about feedback. And you can get them onto great communities. So there's like Discord communities and, art station communities and deviant art communities and things like this, where you can get your child, whatever their passion is, you can get them in touch with people who are professionals in those areas. And I'll tell you from firsthand experience and many of those that I have worked with, getting uh like a reach out from a parent of a child who is extremely interested in my profession, I am like, it'll immediately, and many artists are the same, detour your attention to give them support. Like I think every artist has a deep-seated nature in them to cultivate other artistry, and having a parent reach out with a child who's like 12 to 15 or something that really wants to do what you're doing, I think every single artist out there will take the time and make the time to talk to that parent and give them as much advice as possible. So getting like a mentor or you know, it's quite easy to get some mentorship from some of the people in this business, like much easier than you would anticipate. There is no hidden
Yes.
secrets. Like there's no hidden secrets, to some degree of being a good artist. It's just work
Lots
and
of
do
practice.
repetition. Yeah, repetition and practice. And this is another point, like which is even hard for me because I'm a very organized person. I like structure and organization, yet I'm a creative person. So like my structure and organized logical side of my mind keeps telling my creative side it's not going to work and I never jump sometimes. But you have to, if you're a parent that is like me, you have to let go of that and let a little bit of chaos and disorganization and space for your
Yes.
kids to explore and figure things out, and coming to terms with this reality because artists are very chaotic, especially if they have no sense of the logical side of their brain or structured side of their brain and they're just all about expressionism. Um, so helping train them to get more scheduled and less chaotic is good, but also don't hamper it with your ideas in that regard of keeping everything structured and organized because they are going to be chaotic and disorganized. And this is where some of the best ideas come from, so like I have a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson in it about the eggs and cracking the eggs and things like that in the book about, letting your kids explore and keeping that intuitive nature within them. Um, and then the last thing is um, don't expect your kid to be great at everything. Like an art major, you're doing photography, fine painting, illustration, like writing, I think even in an art degree. Like there's all kinds of disciplines being thrown at your child in an art degree. Just focus on the one that they want, and care about their progress in that and not even in grades.
Mhm.
I think that, there's, to give a very brief example, there was a musician that I saw with a YouTube short who set up his stuff on a bench by a beach and said, if you're having a bad day, put on the headphones with a sign. And a lady came over with a stroller. She put the headphones on. He says, okay, give me a second. And then he just started singing his song that was like an upbeat, kind of positive song. And she started kind of dancing and smiling and stuff. And I was like, this is the marketing tactic of the new wave musicians, because not only are people watching these videos and loving it, but they're going to now want to know your music. You've got a really positive, way of marketing yourself as a musician and all those kinds of things. So, um,
That is really cool.
yeah, so like understanding how to support your kids in that way, and coming up with ideas on how to, you know, market, I guess you could say, their aspirations and passions and things like that as well. And yeah, and outside of that, there's a lot of success in artistry that are unknown to many, many people. Like there was a song that was downloaded 14 million times or something like that for $10 that is utilized in so many advertising, marketing,
Oh,
internal
wow.
marketing videos. That's just a little jingle that a person created on loop and they're a millionaire now, and there's stories like this, like there's and this is the best part about these avenues in the book that I outline of like where to make money. If you go to Shutterstock, it actually tells you like what are the things that are bought the most, and most of it is seasonal stuff and holiday stuff. Like there was one Christmas card template that was bought like 4 million times for $3.99,
Whoa.
and this is because internal teams at many companies don't have graphic designers, so they just go out and buy a template for a Christmas card to give out every year. Um, so there's avenues that you don't even really know about as an artist where you could potentially make money, and I outline a few of those things in the book as well because I've met many and I've worked with many artists that have branded themselves now and are fully independent of the system and make their own money. Um, so
That's
yeah.
incredible. That's really good to know.
Yeah. So this is kind of what's outlined in the book to just kind of, make people more confident that they can support their artistic kid and not think that they're going to be poor because
Yes,
they're not. I
or
mean,
not.
there's more and more jobs every year in the artist and entertainment industry that use these skill sets more and more and more and more, even with the AI influence. I think that companies are going to get smaller and more autonomy is going to happen and they will be a success and still be building success that way. And the large conglomerates of companies that exist in those spaces might not be working as much anymore. So it's even more important to help your kid get some support in those avenues of autonomy and how to make money as an artist for sure.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
talking today about your book. No, I love it. I love the whole like we could go on for hours about this.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we
Sure.
could talk forever, I'm pretty
Right?
sure. Yeah.
I know. And it's like, oh, I really want to
And
get together soon.
it's a short read. I tried to keep it short too for
Yeah,
people so that, yeah.
exactly. Especially for parents to go through. Life is busy enough. Make it short, sweet, to the point, and
Yep.
funny with your sense of humor, which is great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I will post your link for your book on the below the YouTube video. It's on
Awesome.
Amazon.ca. You guys have to check it out. You can actually read some of the book as well on
Yeah,
Amazon.
I think the introduction is there,
Yes,
so.
table of contents, some of the summary. And yeah, you're really gonna like Jeremy's writing style. It's great.
If you liked that video, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more amazing content.